All right, today we're going to try and untangle the incredibly complex web of power, money, and, well, just horrific crimes surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And look, this isn't just a story about one man. It's really about the system that allowed him to operate and all the powerful people who were caught up in his world. So let's get right into it. So picture this. You've got this notorious private island, a whole network of the world's most powerful people, and then the man at the center of it all is found dead in one of the most secure jails in America. The official story? Well, it has some pretty big holes, which has led to all kinds of speculation. In this explainer, we're going to take what we know for sure and try to connect the dots to see what really happened. And the story really has to start in the Caribbean, on a private island that basically became the headquarters for Epstein's whole criminal operation. It looked like paradise, but it was hiding some of the darkest secrets imaginable. So this really gives you a sense of just how big this whole operation was. Little St. James, it was his 72-acre private kingdom. And it wasn't just some luxury getaway. I mean, sure, it had a cinema, private docks, all the usual billionaire stuff. But it's the other things that tell the real story. We're talking about reports of underground tunnels, a really bizarre temple-like building, and of course, that infamous private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express. Everything was designed to let him commit his crimes in complete and total privacy. But okay, how does one guy build an empire like this? How does he get that much power? To really understand that, we've got to go back and trace his path. From a pretty normal start all the way to the top of the financial world. I mean, Epstein's journey is just full of these crazy contrasts. He actually started out as a math teacher back in the 70s, and then somehow he just vaults into the world of Wall Street. By the 1990s, he'd figured out how to manage money for the super, super rich. People like Leslie Wexner, the guy behind Victoria's Secret, who basically handed him the keys to his entire fortune. And that access, plus the insane commissions he was making, that's what built his whole global empire. The mansions in New York, Florida, Paris, all of it. Okay, so once he had the wealth, the powerful network followed. But you have to understand, this wasn't just a bunch of friends hanging out. No, this network was a core part of a really sophisticated criminal operation. And right at the center of that operation was a key partnership. And this thing was a well-oiled machine, with two key players making it all run. You had Epstein, the mastermind, right? The guy with the money and the power. But then you had Ghislaine Maxwell. She was this British socialite, came from a very famous family, and she was the engine. She was the recruiter, the madam, as she's been called. She alleged it used her status to find vulnerable underage girls and lure them in with promises of a better life straight into Epstein's web. And this web of influence, it went right to the very top. You've got former President Bill Clinton, who flew on Epstein's private jet, 26 times. Donald Trump was a friend of his back in the 90s. And then, of course, there's Britain's Prince Andrew, whose connection to Epstein pretty much destroyed his public life. Seriously, his network was a who's who of the most powerful people on the planet. Tech billionaires, movie stars, politicians, you name it. So with all these powerful friends, it really makes you wonder, can you just buy your way out of trouble? Well, back in 2008, when the law finally caught up with Epstein for the first time, the world got a pretty shocking answer to that question. Yeah, this deal, it's just a perfect example of a different justice system for the rich and powerful. So he's facing these serious federal charges, right? Accusations from dozens of girls. But his legal team gets together with the U.S. attorney at the time, a guy named Alexander Acosta, and they cut a secret deal, a secret non-prosecution agreement. That means the federal government just promised not to charge him. And they did it all without telling the victims. So what happened? Instead of facing life in prison, Epstein gets sentenced to just 18 months in a county jail. And he even got to leave every day for work release. It was a total joke. And for years, it really seemed like he'd gotten away with it. Case closed. But then, about a decade later, thanks to some incredible journalism and the bravery of his victims who just wouldn't give up, the whole thing was blown wide open again. And it led to an ending that, honestly, nobody could have predicted. And when things started to fall apart, they fell apart fast. In 2018, a reporter named Julie K. Brown published this incredible series that exposed that whole sweetheart deal, and people were furious. By July of 2019, Epstein was arrested again on federal sex trafficking charges. This time, it looked like there was no escape. But then, just about a month later, he's found dead in his jail cell, before he could name any names. The investigation didn't die with him, though. A year later, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested, and she's now serving a 20-year prison sentence for her part in all of it. Now, officially, his death was ruled as suicide. But let's be real. The timing was just way too convenient for a lot of very powerful people who were probably terrified of what he might say. And that has created one of the biggest, most persistent questions in this entire saga. Okay, so the official story is suicide, but the details, they just don't add up for a lot of people, and they fueled so much doubt. I mean, look at this. The night he died, two CCTV cameras right outside his cell just happened to malfunction. The two guards who were supposed to be watching him, they both fell asleep for hours. A massive violation of the rules. And maybe most suspicious of all, he'd been taken off suicide watch just a few days earlier, even though he'd apparently tried to harm himself before. I mean, to a lot of people, that doesn't sound like a string of coincidences. It sounds like a cover-up. So, Epstein is dead, Maxwell is in prison, but this story, it is far from over. The fight for the whole truth is still going on, with victims trying to get some measure of justice and the public demanding to know who else was involved. You know, a victim compensation fund was set up using what was left of Epstein's estate, and so far it's paid out over $121 million to more than 150 of his survivors. It's obviously not enough to undo the damage, but it is some small measure of justice for the lives he completely shattered. And then you've got the files, the documents that could finally blow the lid off his entire network. Congress even passed something called the Epstein Files Transparency Act to try and force them to be released. And yeah, some have been unsealed, but there's still a massive legal fight going on over more than 1 million pages that are still under lock and key. The official reason? Protecting victim privacy. But a lot of people think that's just a convenient excuse to keep protecting the powerful. You know, this whole fight for the truth, it really started with the courage of just one victim way back in 2005. And today, it's exposed this massive global network of corruption. The whole thing is just a powerful and frankly a disturbing reminder of a simple truth. Money and power might be able to hide a crime for a while, but they can't erase it forever. And so that leaves us right here with the biggest question of all. Epstein is gone, but are his secrets really buried with him? With millions of pages of documents still sealed, and a list of powerful clients and friends that we've probably only seen the tip of, the world is still waiting for the full story. The real question is, will we ever actually get it?